After 72% possession and nearly 20 shots, Chelsea failed to score a single goal against Crystal Palace in their Premier League opener, leaving them with just a point to show for their efforts. And in this video, we're going to explain why. We're going to be breaking down what went wrong for Enzo Maresca's side, why they failed to create any kind of meaningful chance, and what they could have done differently to get themselves the win. "72% possession and 19 shots sound like quite good statistics. But are they? Because out of those 19 shots that Chelsea had, they only had 3 on target. And out of those 3 shots that they had on target, 2 of them came after the 90th minute. Which means that Chelsea had 1 shot on target in the entirety of the 90 minutes of regulation time. And when you find out that that 1 shot on target that they had came in the 3rd minute, there are some big problems. So what went wrong? To best understand what went wrong for Chelsea and Enzo Maresca's system, we need to understand what they were trying to accomplish. When Chelsea and Enzo Maresca are looking to play against a back 5 or a back 3, they enjoy pushing on the fullback into a high advanced position. This has a knock-on effect for Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez in this particular scenario, allowing them to have 3 midfielders around Crystal Palace's 2. This gives them a numerical advantage in a high area of the pitch for Chelsea. It also gives an option for Moises Caicedo, who's the sole defensive midfielder, to have passing lanes into these 3 attacking players, therefore creating, like I said, that numerical overload to then drive forwards. The problem that Chelsea found was the reaction that Crystal Palace had to this particular attempt to progress, and what they decided to do was make their 2 attacking 10s in Eberechi Eze and in Ismail Assar very narrow. In making them as narrow as possible, or as narrow as they did, they essentially cut off the passing lanes that Chelsea's midfielder in Moises Caicedo would look to have towards Cucurella in that 110 and Enzo Fernandez in that other. In nullifying those passing lanes, it simplified the way that Chelsea wanted to go forwards and forced them out wide a lot of the time. The second thing that they did so well is they dropped Mateta onto Caicedo, meaning that he was no longer able to receive passes from these 3 central midfielders. So Chelsea had a huge problem with progression, because once that happened, Chelsea centre-backs were the main avenue and outlet to go forwards. Now you might say you pass it over to the winger, and while they do enjoy isolating 1v1 duels, in this particular situation they failed to take advantage of those 1v1 situations, forcing the ball back to their teammates and respectively to their centre-backs. Which means that a lot of the progression actually came from Chelsea centre-backs, and they were unable to find a way through. Creatively, Chelsea in this game were null and void. A really good illustration of this and Chelsea's problems is right here. Here you have their centre-back on the ball. So what have you actually got with this Chelsea team? You've got a centre-back, a centre-back, and a centre-back. Moises Caicedo is the sole defensive midfielder, and you've got that attacking 3 that we mentioned, with Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, and Marc Cucurella. Ahead of them, you have the front 3. But you can already and immediately see the problems that Chelsea are having to deal with. You've got Ismail Assar blocking that passing lane into Cucurella. You've got Eberechi Eze doing the same for Enzo Fernandez. Pedro Neto is extremely close to this play as well and is far too narrow. This condenses the pitch for Crystal Palace and essentially does part of their job for them. This allows for Adam Wharton and Hughes to have essentially a 2v1 onto Chelsea's main attacking threat in Cole Palmer. Now this is a huge problem for Chelsea's progression because it only gives them one singular option and one singular avenue, and that is to try and go out wide. The problem that they faced here are double-ups from the Crystal Palace wingbacks and another player that would come and join them. This, combined with the fact that Chelsea weren't able to play through Crystal Palace with enough efficiency or with enough speed, meant that they continuously had to recycle round that back 3. Here we have them progressing down the left-hand side as well, just moments after they tried the right. Gittins gets the ball, he's immediately pressured by Munoz, and instead of taking that 1v1, he decides to recycle back. Look at Cucurella, asking him to pass backwards rather than taking the risk of taking on his man. An understandable decision for the new man, but still, it prevents Chelsea from progressing. It gets even worse for them as they try to recycle round that back three, which encourages the Crystal Palace press. Sarr pushes forwards, Eze pushes forwards, and Mateta initiates that starting press. It's through this that it goes back to Reece James, and Eberechi Eze has cut off that pass towards Pedro Neto, who doesn't sprint back to try and receive the ball. It's this lack of movement and lack of intensity for this Chelsea side that forces Reece James back and needs to reset and go back to the goalkeeper, essentially dropping them back yard after yard after yard, and in the end allowing Crystal Palace to regain quite a bit of momentum that they would have lost with Chelsea having the ball in possession for an extended period of time. This was a huge problem. So how would Chelsea look to fix this problem? What could they alter? A potential solution that they could look at is altering the initial positioning of Marc Cucurella and look to change and adapt the way they would utilise their build-up in the first phase of play. Still looking to have that back three that we know Enzo Maresca desperately needs, but looking to have a bit more midfield domination earlier on in their building phase. This causes, and would in theory cause, for the Crystal Palace attacking midfielders to have a decision to make. Do they go and try to cut off the passing lane, or do they go to try and prevent the midfielder from being able to build up with the ball? Because of the numerical advantage in the beginning phase of the pitch, Chelsea have the advantage initially, and I don't believe they were using that enough. If they were to pose enough questions towards these Crystal Palace attackers, I believe Chelsea could then utilise that and change that in their favour. I think it's fair to assume that they would look to stop the passing lanes into those two attacking midfielders to give their defensive midfielders a bit of respite and the ability for them to pressurise when needed. This would have a knock-on effect for the way that they would want to build Chelsea. It would also mean that Mateta would pin himself onto Caicedo, understanding that he's probably the best passer out of himself and Cucurella. So that means that Chelsea should, in theory, with Crystal Palace's players dropping off and stopping those passing lanes, they should look something like this. This gives Marc Cucurella the ability to influence the game like he hasn't been able to in the previous 90 minutes. Here, we could see him receiving passes from Chelsea's centre-back and the left centre-back. In this particular area, he could then look towards passes into the likes of João Pedro, into the likes of Liam Delap if he were to play, or even out wide. He could even take the ball and drive into space, then looking to engage with Crystal Palace players higher up the pitch, but still pushing Chelsea forwards. It's this that could have a knock-on effect for the way that Cole Palmer could play, for the way Enzo Fernandez could play, and for the way that the wingers operate. As for the wingers, you're looking for them to be really high and wide. You want to spread that Crystal Palace backline as much as possible while still driving forwards. The intensity of play still needs to be there, but if you were to combine all of this together, you could find something that would unlock the two 10s in Enzo Fernandez and in Cole Palmer, and then still allow Chelsea to really dominate possession. It's through this that you could then see the wingers get into these situations to enable their 1v1 opportunities, and all of a sudden you might see something like this. If you played them forwards and allowed them to get into the box, you have the option for 1v1 duels in the centre of Crystal Palace's box, giving Chelsea a far greater chance and a far greater set of opportunities to score a goal. As I said, this is just one possible option they could look towards, but I believe it's an option that Enzo Maresca could and Chelsea could really benefit from. But of course, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below on Chelsea and how you believe they could improve going into the future. What did you make of the game, and how do you think Chelsea's season is going to unfold? I'd love to hear from you, so please do get involved in the comments below. Thank you ever so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learnt something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.